and welcome to Ask GMBN Tech, the show where we've compiled a bunch of questions from you lovely people, where you've used hashtag Ask GMBN Tech down in the comments of any of our videos so we can collect them and answer them for you on a show like this. And I believe, Owen, you have the first question.
Yeah, that's right. It's a great one from, I think that's Graveliest Gamer, which if that's the name... Oh, disappointing. I thought it was gravel. Right. He says, why does my linkage squeak when my shock actuates, but only when it's clean? Do I need to replace the bearings as they are the originals from 2014? Oh. I mean, the takeaway point is realistically yes. I think you will have to replace bearings. I mean, it's tricky to know, and it's one of those questions where I think Calvin was really good and said, give us more information. And this is one of those, like, if you tell us your bike, tell us like what conditions you're riding, how often you wash it, all of those, that's useful. But in general, suspension shouldn't really squeak. So if it's squeaking, especially after you've cleaned it, to me, it kind of raises a little flag of like, oh, maybe when you're cleaning it, maybe you're slightly overzealous with some of those cleaners out there. Actually, not Petey's, that's very gentle. But some of those cleaners can be really, well, quite harsh because they're degreasers and they can just remove grease. And if your bike's 10 years old, there's a good chance that there won't be any grease in there. And whilst your suspension can still actuate, you might do some weird things that you don't necessarily notice because you've been riding the bike so long. But yeah, I would say take the shock out, cycle the suspension, just feel for any knocks or any catches. And if it's easy enough to do, with older bikes it often is, there might just be a dust cover, and then if you're really careful with like a sharper blade or a pick, you can pop the rubber seal off, and then just inspect and see if there's any grease in there. But I think even if you've been...
That's the linkage bearings you're talking about,
the
not the
shock
bearings. Itself.
Not the shock. No, that's removed. That's put to one side. You don't have to kind of do anything with that yet. But I think...
Isolating it's a good place to start, though, isn't it? Because is it the shock or is it the linkage bearings? Who knows? It might not even be either of those. No,
I mean, if your bike's 10 years old and you've never serviced the bearings, I feel like it probably is those. But if you've got the shock off already, it's probably time to get that service too. So I know I've just added to your kind of like service list, but the big thing is with replacement bearings and a shock that's been serviced, your rear suspension will feel better than new. It'll be amazing. Hopefully that helps. Let us know. Let us know if you've got more details on that question.
Okay, my question from Eric BF, who said, can I inflate my shocks with my floor pump? Probably not, is the short answer, but the long answer is because your floor pump probably doesn't go up high enough. I'm guessing most shocks, well, the rear shocks will go up to 300 psi, although most of us don't ever go up to that in a shock. You still need that kind of range, which a shock pump will allow. It's also designed to work specifically with suspension, so it is more accurate. Being a smaller hand pump will also be a little bit more accurate than a larger volume track pump. Even if your track pump does have a Schrader fitting, which will go onto your suspension valves, because it's effectively a Schrader valve, the shock pumps will twist on, and some of them have a proper locking mechanism to sort of isolate it and give you a really accurate reading. And it is important to have an accurate reading on your suspension, because even 1 or 2 degrees PSI, not degrees, 1 or 2 PSI difference in your suspension would be really noticeable. So short answer, well, long answer, is it's probably best to stick with suspension pumps.
Great question here from Fearden, we're going to go with. Is it possible to increase the travel of my RockShox Pike Select 150mm fork? The Sanctions says a sag measurements for both 150 and 160. Thanks, and keep up the great content. Lovely, thanks. I mean, I can stop there really, just see. Oh, right, yeah, the question. Right. I mean, it depends. Realistically, I think if your fork is saying 150, 160, that, yes, you can. The current Pike is not changeable, so I'm pretty sure it's set at 140, so can't change it. But it sounds like you've got an older model, which means that you can, which is great. So you'll need to get a new air spring, so that's kind of like the whole leg assembly, and that's what dictates the travel. So you need a long one of those. They're pretty reasonable. They're only about 50 quid. Whilst you're at it, it would make sense to do a lower leg service. So you'll get all the O-rings, all the seals, all the bushings, all those bits. And yeah, it's still not wildly pricey. So I mean, you can choose to do it yourself. I suspect it'd be under 100 quid to do it all. A bit of faff, maybe a little bit of mess, but you could always send away and get it done too. I mean, the one final thing I'd say, is just check that your bike can take 160mm, which I know sounds daft. It's only 10mm more, but if your bike's still in warranty and it's only warranty to 150, upping the fork travel, I mean, it's not the end of the world because actually 100, extra 10mm, it's just a bit nicer on travel. But yeah, check your warranty first, but yes, it's possible.
Okay, my question is from Wavy Dave, who says, for multiple hours in the saddle, how does a change in angle caused by suspension movements affect seat angle? Should you set your seat angle to take this into account? Maybe is the answer. So, just to explain, with your saddle, if you're sinking into your suspension, now say you have a full suspension bike here, if you're sinking into your suspension and it goes down, if your sag and your suspension is reasonably balanced, it might not change its angle at all. If you're on a hardtail, because you haven't said which sort of bike you're on, if you're on a hardtail, you've only got suspension at the front. So if that was to sag into the suspension quite a lot, just with your body weight, then you might get a bit of a nose drop here on your saddle. So it might go downwards, and you might want to correct it upwards so that when you sag into your suspension, it becomes level when you're sat on the bike. However, it all depends. It depends how much travel, how much sag you're running. If you're running that hardtail, if you're running a full sus, it might not make a difference at all. The real way to test whether you need to adapt it is to go out and ride it and to figure out whether it feels right for you. If there's a lot of pressure building up on the front of your saddle, then maybe you need to drop it a little bit. If you don't feel like your sit bones are being supported for any reason, maybe it's in the wrong place. And this is something you're going to need to play with over time, maybe with really small incremental movements, so that you can go out and ride it and see if things are better or worse. But unfortunately, there's no magic formula that I can give you in the outset other than try it.
Great question here from Smetwork. He's been thinking a lot, always good to think, much improved. He's saying about an Alfine hub and could you fit it to a hardtail? So brief story, Alfine is Shimano's brand of internal hub gear rear gears. So it looks from the outside like a slightly bigger rear hub, and it looks just like it's got sort of one gear effectively because it's just, well, it is one gear.
Like and all the gears,
exactly like a single speed, and all the gears and all the cogs are actually inside the rear hub. They're really clever. I think they're up to 12 speed now. And yeah, you could use them. They're not in Shimano's mountain bike group set, so I think you'd have to be quite sensible about how you used it, so maybe not running it on a downhill bike. People have done that in the back.
Gear hub, isn't it?
I think it's in their urban range, so you can have it on some of the sort of like sit and bed Dutch style bikes. They'll have those hubs. I mean, the advantage is, because there are advantages there, is that from the outside, you've not got expensive dangly bits. You're not, when the bike's covered in mud, well, the chain's not having to do, it's just having to do load carrying. It's not having to shift up and down, so there's no side loads on it. And yeah, all those gears inside are really well sealed. So there's lots of advantages. Disadvantages are, well, technically you're not meant to use it because it's not designed for mountain biking. The gear range wasn't that wild, so it's not like the huge range that you can get with the modern even the modern 1x10 cassettes. And it is quite heavy. It does ride a little bit differently. And I'm saying that because back in the day, Charge, probably about 15 years ago, Charge used to make a bike, and I think Kona even did too, where it looked like a single speed, but it had this hub gear. So yeah, I think for a long time, it's been a sort of like a dream winter bike for many people. But, well, humble rear derailleur and one by has made the hub gear sort of really heavy and quite expensive. But yeah, if you want to try it, let us know, see how it goes. Yeah. I think probably there's systems like Linkage, which are designed to last a lot longer, might serve as a better option. Or gearboxes. What are people's thoughts on gearboxes? Maybe we'll just leave it like that. I'm answering, yeah, you could, but also think about gearboxes.
Bit of end of the day fun here, Owen. This is from Tim Sadler, one of our regulars. He said, bit of a challenge for you guys. If you built up a bike with the logic that you could take it completely apart with the smallest number of tools possible, how many tools would you need and what compromises would you need to make? Oh, let's think about the minimums. Because the first thing I'm thinking is we need a group set that only uses the exact same tool to sort of minimize tools. So, there's SRAM often use T25 in a lot of their stuff. So can we change all of the bolts to T25?
Oh, well, that's changing the bolts. That's not what Tim said.
He said we can build up a bike with the logic that we need a minimal amount of tools. So should we just
could do that with
agree
any of them.
now? Okay, we could get everything
You can
5
just change
mil.
all the bolts to, well, I think probably 4 mil, because there's some little bitty ones.
4 mil, okay,
Yeah.
4 mil. Or I like T25 because it doesn't round.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't change all the bolts...
Then you'd have T25 on your bolts on your rotors as well. So that's you've narrowed it down to one basic tool rather than T25 and a 5 mil or a 4 mil Allen key.
I mean, depending on your drivetrain, yeah. I mean, if you went single speed, you could go really minimal. I think
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
If I think about a normal group set that we haven't changed all the parts on to sort of cheat Tim's question, we'd need like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 doesn't exist, an 8, because you've got to take pedals off.
Oh yeah, the pedals, of course.
Yeah, potentially a T25. Now I was thinking, if you had a Shimano group set, you wouldn't need a T25 if you had centre lock rotors, because the centre lock rotor one would also do a bottom bracket.
Oh, okay.
Headset tool, that's a bit trickier because you need to kind of like removal and insert.
Well, you could just drop in. It's just like a drop-in one, no?
On some frames.
Yeah, we'll go for a drop-in frame. You won't need a tool for that, but we do need a bottom bracket tool, so that's another tool.
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah, but we're doing that with the rotors. Yeah, you're right.
Depending on if you've got cables, I'm old school. I like cables, outers and inners. You need cable cutters for that.
Oh, well, why don't we just build up a SRAM Eagle drivetrain that doesn't have any cables, and we don't need cable cutters. We're all on T25 bolts and centre lock rotors that then opens the bottom bracket. I'm going to go for 5 tools. 5 tools max.
I think it's
10.
reckon
I build a bike that only has 5. You going 10?
Well, yeah, because you've got to bleed your brakes as well.
Prove us wrong, guys. Let us know down in the comments below.
Saying 10,
how many tools does your bike really need? I reckon we could get it down to 5. Anyway, if you have any questions for us that are burning right now, use hashtag Ask GMBN Tech down in the comments right now, and we'll try and find them and answer them on a show like this. Thanks for watching. For now, bye.